The law will change in 2014. The Children and Families Bill going through Parliament now includes Part 5, which is about us. And what that will do is to close the Office of the Children's Rights Director at Ofsted and make one children's rights organisation for England. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but we think that's a really exciting thing, that we finally have in one place the fight for the rights of the child in this country.
And we sense real frustration from practitioners about how difficult it can be to make sure young people get the services they need. And we heard various tales of young people missing out on health assessments, missing out on immunisations when they were due, and waiting long times for assessments from community child and adolescent mental health services. And we also heard some real horror stories about what the impacts of some of these delays can have, including stories of a young person taking their own life whilst they were waiting for a delayed mental health assessment.
Yesterday I visited Family Futures in Islington, and I had the privilege of meeting 3 families who between them have adopted 5 children. And they told me how they were benefiting directly from the excellent therapy being provided in that centre. I'm keen to see as many adoptive families as possible benefit from this kind of help through the Adoption Support Fund, which following a trial will be rolled out nationally in 2015. Families like the couple who found music therapy to be a terrific outlet for their adopted son, helping him overcome high levels of anxiety to blossom into a sociable and popular little boy.
As all of you will know, effective assessment, and demonstrated by the research, is clearly linked to an increased chance of safety and stability after a child returns home. However, what we found was actually a wide variety of inconsistent approaches to that. We conducted interviews with social workers, their managers, local authority solicitors, right up and down the country. And this is just a quote which I think exemplifies the point from a social worker. They said, "The assessments are not always high quality. They lack analysis. We're good at gathering the information, but we're not always good at making sense of it, of making a plan."
That in every other form of media or communications, there's a sort of compact between government, consumers and companies. So, for example, you'll all know this from the way you watch TV, that we have a watershed. We define quite carefully what can be before and after the watershed. We have very clear film definitions, very precisely parsed definitions of film ratings. We put adult content on satellite channels behind a pin-protected system, and we all accept that as part of this collective responsibility in keeping people safe. But somehow with the internet, it's just different.
We know breastfeeding makes sense. We know emotional and social development makes sense in the early years. We know nutrition and language and the bond between a mother and a baby, or a parent and a baby, are important. Why is it we don't do that in terms of national policy holistically and drive that with force? And I suppose what we're saying as a lottery distributor, there are choices, and we are making a positive choice to take a holistic response to some of these issues.
We are trying to create the social norm that even if you're not on a good relationship with the partner that you had before, you are still responsible for your child, and what people do is pay for their kids. And we have been getting better at that even under the current system. So a few years ago, less than 2 in 3 non-resident parents were paying any maintenance at all. The latest figures are more than 4 in 5. It is becoming normal that when your relationship breaks down, you still pay for your kids.
Statistics from the Department for Education show neglect is the most common reason for children to become subject to a child protection plan, accounting for almost 43% of cases over the period to March 2011. Neglect can have terrible consequences. The Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health warns that it causes children to have low esteem, feel isolated, disengaged, socially disconnected, and the risk of fatalities from neglect is high.
We've been involved in You're Welcome in some way or shape since the beginning through our local government office, and even with the recent changes in health, we continue to support the programme in North Tyneside. So what do we actually do? One of our officers works with a health colleague to deliver training to health professionals on how, and importantly why, they should involve children and young people. From here, we can offer one-to-one support for services to get involved, setting up their own groups, networks or forums. But we also train young people to become Your Welcome verifiers, so they actually go into services with the Your Welcome leads to assess how good they are at making their services young people friendly.
We've worked with the Department of Health on schemes which are being rolled out now about having health specialists in police stations, so that at point of arrest it's possible to really pin down some of the children who absolutely should not be there in a criminal justice capacity and need to be diverted for more support. There's plenty of way to go on that, but it's a really good approach which we generally want to develop, and also generally a kind of triage approach in police stations is now fairly common.
There's professional staff on board, but without a crew of young people, the sails don't go up, the boat isn't steered, the food isn't prepared, neither is the washing up or the cleaning done or any of the other chores on board. The power of this activity is its isolation from the land, and the obvious reasons why, for example, you need less sail in windy weather. Boat heels over. If you don't take the sails down or make it smaller, it just keeps heeling over, and that's very obvious once you're on board. It's also important to keep a good lookout, particularly in the shipping lanes, and that's pretty obvious too.
We needed to use something that was acknowledged as being right and proper, and that is called a CAM, which is a cancer awareness measure that was used to actually ascertain adults' cancer awareness. And we adapted that for use with young people. And we wanted to evaluate the impact of our intervention, those talks that we are giving in schools. That was obvious, and we needed to do that. Let's talk about it is the name of the campaign we had. We wanted to encourage people to talk about this thing called cancer.